Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Off Meta Musings. I'm your host, Itan. Today, I've got for you another match play tournament report from up at Warhammer World. We played another 3 rounds of the Rumblepack. It was only a small event this time round. We only had 6 participants, but I was there. I was testing some more stuff with Hunters of Huanchi. We had Charles there. If you want to say hello, Charles.
Hi there.
Yep, he was doing things with Beastmen, so we're mostly just going to be talking through our lists today, what we thought about them, where we think they would go in the future, and yeah, it's going to be a bit of a shorter one, so let's get right into it. As normal, we were playing up at Warhammer World. The terrain is always really, really good for them. I think they've settled into kind of how they want to do their Warcry terrain. I think these 2 boards are probably examples of the densest terrain setups. I think Charles, you and I played on something very similar to the bottom left-hand board in our last game.
Yeah, it was a similar one, but it was more horizontal across rather
Yes.
than
Yeah,
diagonal.
exactly. Yeah, slightly more open, but we still had all the walls, so movement still plays a really big part. I think that's something they're going to continue going forward, which I really enjoy. And that's it, really. I mean, we've talked about the terrain up at Warhammer World, God, so many times now, and I think they always do a really good job. Moving on to the lists, I managed to win this time round. I've got it here. Look, I've got a big old trophy that says champion on it. Very happy. This is finally I managed to win with Hunters of Huanchi. I also managed to break my losing streak against Soulblight Gravelords, so I'm happy to say I am now 5 losses and 1 win, which is very good, I think. It just so happens that I managed to do it this time round, and I think this list is probably, out of everything that I've tested, the best way to play Hunters of Huanchi. I haven't managed to find a better build that gives the all-round package of the utility that you get from Hunters, the speed and mobility, the boosting from Fight for Profit, and on top of that, just the extra strength that you get from the Starblood Stalkers. They're still pointed on the old Warcry 1.0 algorithm, so they're not paying for that massive movement, and what you get out of that is you get the 10 wound skinks, you still get the movement 6, which is great stuff, you get 12 inches of range on your ranged attacks instead of just the 8 of your normal claws, which is also really, really good. Tok and Otterpaddle are only 5 points more than your Huanchi's claws, but for that, Otterpaddle himself, he gets an extra point of crit damage, which is very useful. Tok gets the extra point of range, so 12 as opposed to 8. They all get a melee attack, but that's not something you really need to use because of the FAQ that happened in January. But I think overall they're 2 really good additions to the warband. Kixi Taka himself gets the Wizard Bolt, which is very powerful. 2 shots at strength 3 with 3/6. So it kind of gives the hunters something that they can't do normally, which is really threaten those high wound fighters in any kind of meaningful way. And also Kixi Taka has his triple, which gives +1 move and +1 toughness to all of your friendly fighters within 9 inches, which is, it's very impactful when you need to use it. And at only 125 points, it's an 18 wound skink, which is very strong. They all have the Seraphon reaction, which really serves to boost their survivability, which kind of works when you put it in the context of the Hunters of Huanchi. Just as a reminder, the Seraphon reaction allows you to react before your opponent attacks you, and then you can turn up to 2 crits into hits. So when your opponent's hitting you with 1/3 or 1/4 damage, for example, all those hits effectively turn to 1 damage, and you can survive a long time just off of the back of those reactions. I think the main include here. So last time I was using Fight for Profit. If we go back to my previous video that I did for Warhammer Fest, I was using Fight for Profit, but I was using it on a Mizzen Master. And my problem with the Mizzen Master is that I felt like I was always misplaying with it. The Mizzen Master is a really good melee profile, and it's got that big movement. So really, you want the Mizzen Master to be in there, to be fighting, to kind of be knocking down your opponents. But on the same time, you want it to be hanging back and sitting around your objectives so that you get to use Fight for Profit to really boost the damage of your attacks. So, for example, a Fight for Profit Otterpaddle suddenly goes to 4 attacks per shot. If he's shooting twice, it's 8 shots at strength 3 with 1/5 damage, which can really hurt someone. Kixi Taka similarly goes to 4 shots at strength 3, 3/6, or shooting twice, 8 shots at strength 3, 3/6, which is kind of ridiculous. It really negates the entire downside to Hunters of Huanchi. But yeah, I felt like I was always misplaying. So I downgraded the Mizzen Master to an Aether Chemist. It's a lot cheaper. It allowed me to get the 11th Skink into the Warband, which I found was really, really useful. I was previously playing 10 fighters, now it's 11. And on top of that, the Aether Chemist's gun is it's bonkers. It's absolutely ridiculous. The 6-inch range, which is pretty good. The idea is that you're parking him on an objective, and then using fight for profit, and then having your skinks and your other support pieces around him so that they can benefit. It's got 6 shots, so using fight for profit that goes to 8 shots at range, because fight for profit allows you just to increase the amount of shots of your attacks, not just melee attacks like other abilities do. It's strength 4, so it's going to be wounding most things on 4s. If you're talking about something like Soulblight Gravelords, it'll be wounding most of them on 3s, which is really powerful. The 1-3 damage profile is fine, but when you're throwing so many dice at a thing, the numbers stick.
That's the thing. It's
Yeah,
just the sheer number of dice.
exactly. Charles, I played you in the last game, and I kind of parked my Aether Chemist on an objective in the middle of the board.
Yeah,
And
and it was just he just blew away a Bestigor in like one hit, and it's like, oh, okay, that's 12 wounds just gone.
yeah, just zipped away. Just when you've got 16 shots and you're firing, it's a little bit ridiculous. His kill tally during the event, he killed Abhorrent Arc Regent basically by himself. He killed several Bestigor by himself. He survived the game, and every turn he was just shooting because with those changes in the January FAQ, he gets to shoot that thing in combat, which is which is ridiculous. Like,
Scary.
he's very scary. He'll never use that combat profile. He just doesn't need it. So yeah, he kills several Bestigor. He killed an Arc Regent. He did a big chunk of damage to a Vargoyle. He killed an Annihilator in one round of shooting. Like all 20 wounds just gone. I think the Aether Chemist is criminally underused. If you're looking for something that's a pure fight for profit carrier, I think the Aether Chemist it's really good. It's only 155 points. It's not super expensive, and yeah, I think it's great. I cannot sing its praises highly enough. Charles, you played against me in the last game. So what did you think playing against like this version of Hunters of Huanchi?
It's the numbers that because you've got 11 models,
Mm,
and with the changes we've done with the Beastmen, I was also on 11, so I could actually match you for parity. But if you're an elite list or even any of the bespoke warbands and you're 9, 10 models, suddenly just that extra one model on a lot of objective-based games is strong.
yes.
Again, the Aether Chemist, if he gets into the right position, can just lock down an area, because you send somebody within 6 inches of him and he just blasts you twice, or he moves up and blasts you,
Mm,
and he's got a good chance of just
oh yeah.
removing a chaff model and even seriously damaging anything that isn't a chaff. And yeah, the upgraded skinks for that 5 extra points, they're just better, so it's kind of why not?
Yeah, exactly. There aren't any big events for a while now in the UK. I think our next one's in November, I think. But if there
Yeah,
were,
possibly.
this is what I'd be bringing most definitely. I think even on normal missions and not just Rumblepack missions, which really want some more guys than your opponents, I think it's got more than enough strength to be able to knock out like key pieces in one round, and that's really what the hunters were missing before. And I tried a bunch of different ways to kind of try and counter that, but I think this what I've settled on is really really good. What did you bring, Charles? You brought Beasts of Chaos.
Yeah, so we after the last events with them, it was just seeing they were just lacking something. Well, I say they were lacking something. The what is it?
We had a
What's it called?
Shagoth last time.
Shaggoth. Yeah, there's the Shaggoth. It's a good model. It's fast. It's got a decent hit, and it has the ability to just shoot lightning at people, which is really useful. But were we running 9 or 8?
It was 9, I think.
9,
Yep.
yeah. And there was a couple of games where just having one more model could have made a bigger difference. So we dropped the Shaggoth and we just went for more Bestigors from 4 to 6, and it's just Bestigors are in their name best.
They are
They've
the
got
best
a
scores.
great profile. They've got a better than average profile with 5 moves, 4 defense, and 12 wounds. That's a solid profile. And just their attacks, 3 dice at strength 4 with 2/4. It's really strong. We had like 15 points or something left in the list, so we could bring 2 of the Gores from the Underworld's Warband, and they're only 5 points more than a Gore, but they have better stats than a ghur.
They do, yeah.
Well, they have the same number of wounds. They have 10 instead of 8 for a what's the little one? Ungor.
Ungor, yes.
Because that's the thing. They're actually Ungor raiders, but they have ghur level stats.
Yeah.
So plus they have an extra pip of crit damage over the ghurs.
And an extra point of range on their attacks.
And an extra point of range because they're armed with basically spears. So
Yes.
they're like 5 points more, and when you have the points, you just bring them because they're just better than your basic guys. At 11 models, it just gave me plenty in each deployment, and it's actually what really messed you up in the game where we were playing each other in the final round, because it was an 11 to 11 model tie, so you couldn't just outnumber me on an objective because I could equal or outnumber you somewhere else.
They're deceptively tough. Like for 60 points or for 65 points, sitting at 10 wounds, I think that's real good.
It's just a couple more wounds than you can reliably do. And it was, if it wasn't for the Aether-Chemist just blowing a Bestigor away, with 12 wounds and you're damaging on 4s, it's like, okay, he should be okay. Maybe he'll take 3 or 4 wounds. It's like, 12. It's like, oh, okay, well, he's a dead Bestigor.
Yes.
It's they can generally hold on for long enough to get their hits in.
Yeah, they can. They can take a move attack action of pretty much anyone running into them. And if you don't kill a Bestigor, he is going to do damage back to you. It's a lot of damage,
especially with a 2/4 profile. And if they do get to make 2 attacks, and you can give them the +1 attack, that's a good chance they're killing a chaff model or even a non-chaff model.
One thing that got me, and when we drew our game, our last game that we had, and one thing that actually got me was I totally forgot that all of his Beastmen had Beastmen Ambush, which is on a double, the fighter can make a free move on the first turn.
Yeah, it's a free move of the value of the dice. I had a double 6 on the first round, which just basically allowed a Beastman to just go screaming across the board, and it just was completely caught you out.
I think overall our two warbands were actually really evenly matched, not just on the numbers, but I could win the range fight and you would win the combat fight. And eventually what happens is if you run into a skink and you damage a skink, the skink can run away and that's absolutely fine. And you can dance around and do whatever. But when it's a Bestigor hitting you, that skink is not going to survive a second round of combat.
Yeah, and you were having to run guys away, but then you're running them away from the points, and you're not doing enough damage back to kill me to take me off the points. You were having to do the worst thing of putting people in range just to contest.
Exactly, yeah. I really enjoyed, from what I saw, the way this list played.
It could. Well, I played against the Splintered Fang and the Stormcast.
Yeah.
And the Stormcast didn't go as well as I played against them last time, just mostly due to better dice on the Stormcast side. But the outnumbering was what really made a difference. And then against Splintered Fang, again, they're tough enough to take a hit. But yeah, it's a solid list. Like the Skinks, it kind of needs to be played well, and you need to know when to engage and what to engage with.
I'm wondering how this list would do on normal missions, so lots of objectives and maybe treasure missions or kill missions, that kind of thing. Do you think it had enough damage to push through that with like those 6 Bestigor, or would you want something like a Minotaur, or I don't know, something along those lines?
If you were doing it for the missions that do include things like killing or holding like one important objective, you may be better off taking like a Minotaur or the Shaggoth, just to have something that is very big, very tanky, and quite killy. If we had the the cursed objective one where you have to hold the one objective to win the game, I would have to pick it up, run it away, drop it, hope that the opponent doesn't run over and pick it up and run it back. Whereas if you've got something like the Minotaur, it could move up to it in turn 1, probably move slightly back and then not die, and then just walk away into a corner and be safe because it's got enough wounds that holding the objective isn't going to kill it in 4 turns.
And the warband's fast, it's got movement 5, but there's nothing there that's ridiculous fast.
5. Yes, that's the only thing, is if you have to like cross the board, you're going to just having to... No, turn 1 is your best chance to be able to cross the board because you can get that extra double move. But if you're getting a guy across the board, he's going to be all on his own and they can just get jumped. You would probably want one big thing in
Mm.
your list if you're bringing this for more normal missions. So
Sure.
you'd maybe drop the 2 normal gaurs or one of the normal gaurs and 2 bester gaurs to give you that points to do it with.
I
If
think,
you
yeah,
needed to, you drop another buster score, and that's 320 points you've got, and that's
it's a lot of points.
you can bring a good thing for 320 points.
Something that you would continue to play in the future, given
Yeah,
what
it's
the
good
missions are.
fun to play.
Mm.
Yeah, let's say it's relatively good fun. It has some fun abilities, and it doesn't require a lot of thinking at times, but also it requires a lot of thinking to if you're having to outnumber your opponent.
I feel like you've played the full spectrum of speeds and warband sizes now.
Yes, yeah, I've played the small elite heavy list. This is a largest fast list.
Funnily enough, the Bestigor do the same amount of damage as your Blight Kings. I think
Um,
that's almost what the Blight Kings need, really. Like, so you've got these Bestigor here, and they're fantastic, but what you do have are things like Gors and things like Korsh and Murgoth, who can kind of fill in those numbers. I
Hmm.
think if you weren't, with the Blight Kings anyway, if you weren't forced to take just 7 Blight Kings, and if you could take, I don't know, 5 Blight Kings and 4 little dudes, I think overall it would work far
Yeah,
better. As if you could take Plague Bearers, for example, like
or
five
even
five Blight Kings and 4
Chaos
Plague Bearers.
Marauders or something like that, if there was, or even Pestigors. Like,
Ooh, Pestigors from Blood
yeah,
Bowl.
well, yeah. Was there Pestigors in Age of Sigmar?
They used to have models way back during Warhammer Fantasy, and
Hmm.
Pestigors also had models back in Warhammer Fantasy, but I don't think they ever got updated rules.
But it would be nice if you could bring things like if there was Pestigors
Oh
in the
yeah,
Nurgle list, just to give you a couple of extra bodies, kind of thing.
yeah,
Because
sure.
that's the only thing they're missing is a couple of bodies to make up on objective missions. Plague Marauders, something like that, would just allow you to drop one guide to bring 2.
Yep. That's very true.
Um,
Oh, maybe in Warcry 3
hmm.
when we come back next year. But anyway, yes, those were our 2 lists. The other few lists that competed, I said it was a small one. We had Ed, who took Splintered Fang. He's taken this list a bunch of times.
He didn't bring an ally this time, so this was pure Splinter Fang. He was bringing a
Brought
Zinch Wizard, I think it
Yeah,
was.
that's
Yeah.
true. He would take the Zinch Wizard because it's got some buff abilities that work quite nicely. But he went pure Splintered Fang this time to see how it would go. And yeah, this is what he took. Leela took Soulblight Gravelords. We've seen this list before. This was actually the same list as Mike took for Warhammer Fest. As a quick rundown, they like to take the Vargoyle in there to have a fast-moving hammer unit, because in the Rumblepack, having something that moves fast and can do damage and clear things off of objectives is actually it's very important, and it's really useful. Similarly, that's why we've got the Abhorrent Arc Regent in there for its movement buff ability, and also the Direwolf just for some extra movement. Then we've got fairly standard Graveguard, skeletons, a couple of zombies. Zombies have a couple more wounds than normal skeletons do, so for them it's ideal that they can sit on objectives just to kind of soak up things a little bit more.
Yeah, they're just they're a tiny bit tougher, and they won't just die in one hit.
Yes, exactly. But otherwise, it's Soul Black Gravelords. It does exactly what it does. It's a very good list, and I played against it a couple of times now. This specific variant, and I think this is, like I said, this is the only time I've managed to beat it with all the changes. It can go either way. And then finally, we got Mike Stormcast Eternals. This is some stuff that they were painting up. It's got Annihilators and Vanquishers with the Annihilator Prime, Meteoric Hammer, and regular Vanquishers. We were talking about this. This is very close to what a Thick Boy Cardio style list would be if it had Calthea Zandire. It just happened that they didn't have Calthea Zandire painted up at the time, so
Yeah,
they
the
couldn't.
Annihilators are also the Hammer Shield ones.
Yes, instead of
Um,
Super Hammers.
instead of Great Hammers, which just make them basically impossible to damage. Everything is basically wounding them on 5s, and it's just they have 20 wounds, and when you're rarely wounding them, it goes a long way.
I think 20 wounds is good, but it's not going to last forever. And if you can get a couple of hits on them, Stormcast start to die very quickly. It's only really their characters that get like massive amounts of wounds that can really soak that damage. And that's it. I like I said, it was a small one. Here's the final standings. I managed to win, so I can now officially retire my Huanchi unless something happens. Leela came second, Soul Black Gravelords. Mike third with the Stormcast. Charles, you came Beast of Chaos, and Ed with Splintered Fang. One thing that I do want to talk about, we were chatting to the tournament organizers while we were up there. They were talking about a possible second season of the Rumblepack, which I think could be fairly interesting. They were mentioning that the Rumblepack, while it's done its job to kind of curtail monsters along with the terrain, what they didn't really want was every time the best thing to bring is basically 15 guys, because it's way too much. The games, they were designed for an hour, but when you've got two warbands of like 10 plus models fighting each other, they go over an hour.
Yeah.
So in season 2, we're probably looking at less objective based missions. The big objective missions that they're going to put in will probably have no more than 5 objectives to make things a little bit easier for the smaller warbands to handle. I think secondaries are going to stay in there because I think they're a very nice counterpoint to the primaries when they've been chosen specifically for those primary missions. So a big objective mission paired with a secondary that rewards you for doing other things that maybe smaller warbands might be better for. So that looks like it's going to stay. But yeah, I'm excited for season 2 of this. I think it's really good that they're listening to feedback from their players and that they want to improve the mission packs that they put out. I think that's very exciting. It shows that there is at least some interest in maintaining the game. So that's real good.
If you're looking for a game that you actually want to be able to buy and play, unlike Kill Team, Warcry's great. You only need a dozen models at the most, depending on what you're playing.
That's very true. If you cannot buy Kill Team, play Warcry, and no one can buy Kill Team. So there we go. But then again, no one can buy any major Games Workshop game at the moment apart from Warcry. So we're good on that regard. But that's it really for today. As I said before, only a short one. Charles, is there anything you want to add to this?
No, not really. It's just hopefully we'll get some bigger events and have a bit more information.
I think I said before that the next big event should be sometime in November, so one of the proper weekend events. Those regularly get 35 players, so those are pretty good. By that time, what will we have? So the starter set will be out by that time, and all of, maybe not all of them, but we should have at least 4 new
One or
warbands.
two, one or two new big boxes with the.
Well, not big boxes.
Oh no,
So
they're not
they're
doing.
doing,
Yeah, they're just doing single warbands, aren't they?
yeah, they're kind of doing versus boxes. So
Yes,
we've got
yeah.
a bunch of Order versus Death, and then we've got Order versus Destruction coming out. But I don't think Order versus Destruction will be out by that time. But we should have at least 1 new Order and 1 new Death warband. Fingers crossed for Nighthaunt. That's what I want, and we'll see how that shakes things up. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's it. That's it from us for today. So thank you very much for joining me, Charles.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I've been Itan, and I will see you later.